I was recently interviewed on Concrete podcast, brilliant YouTube channel, and that got me to watch hours and hours of the guys on Concrete interviewing Matt Cox. Now, if you're not familiar with Matt Cox, he has become a YouTube sensation, one of the FBI's most wanted fraudsters. And it's the way Matt tells his story. He's got this unique charisma. It doesn't look like a big tattooed, muscly convict guy. He's just got this unique charisma, and he tells his story, and it is like compulsively watchable. Once I started watching it, I thought, all right, I'll dip into this. Like hours later, I'm like, what is going to happen next? So I'm absolutely delighted to have Matt on the podcast here today. And you've got a book coming out, Matt. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. And I do. I Shark in the Housing Pool, which is my book, and it's actually available right now on Amazon. And it's my story. It's basically my story up to prison, and it kind of gives you a quick recap of what happened in prison. But it's maybe a chapter. But the bulk of the book, 95% of it is my, I guess, crime spree, you'd call it.
What a hell of a spree it was. And the link to the book is in the description box below this video, as are links to any of Matt's stuff that he wants us to put down there. So how did it start, Matt?
Uh, Gosh, I mean, I've written a story just like you've written, several stories, and I mean, it started with, I was a dyslexic kid who struggled in school and eventually ended up getting a degree, and that was pretty much, I hate to say this, useless. It was in fine arts. There's just, what am I going to do with that? Uh, and so I ended up having a girlfriend, and I was broke, struggling, you know, was not making it. And I ended up having a girlfriend who went to work for a subprime lender, and she said, you're made for this. You're absolutely made for this. You gotta do this. And so I really just stopped working completely and went to work for this lender, and they sent you off and trained you. And I came back and I started originating mortgage loans. And I think my very first loan was, I don't think I know, my very first loan was fraud. My very first loan, my the manager of the branch office I worked for a company called Eagle Lending, she looked through the file. She took one piece of paper out and laid it to the side and said, "It's perfect, except this person was 30 days late on their mortgage, and it's a deal killer. You're done. It's not going to close." I mean, I got Ford Motor Cars looking for my truck. I'm a month or two behind on my mortgage. My credit cards are getting cut up. I mean, it's bad. So it's like either I fix this or I'm moving back in with my parents. And she told me, "Hey, look," I said, "Man, that's fraud. I could get in trouble." And she says, "No, the worst that'll happen if they catch it is that they'll fire you. You can always blame the client, say you didn't know." She goes, nobody's calling the FBI. I was like, okay, so I whited it out. I mean, this is my manager told me to do it. I whited it out. I stuck it in the file, sweat bullets for 5 or 6 days. The loan closes. They cut me a check for $3,500. I mean, that was a lot of money. That was 20, almost 20 years ago. That caught up all my bills. So very quickly, like I closed like 4 loans like the first month. Then it was 6. Then it was 8. Then it was 10. Then they make me a branch manager. Then they're got me training people. I mean, and very quickly it escalates. It's like everything, it starts small, and it just, before you know it, if you walked into my office, with a pulse, I was getting you a loan. I'm changing W-2s, I'm changing pay stubs, I'm making fake banks, I'm making fake bank statements. I mean, anything you needed. I was gonna manufacture it because it was going right through. Everything was going through underwriting. Even when they caught it, even when they caught me, eventually I ended up opening my own mortgage company. Even the times I got caught, and I don't mean got caught like with a little $200,000 loan. I mean like we've closed 7 or 8 loans, maybe 10 loans with a company and they've got $2 million worth of bad loans and they stumble across it, the bank, the president would just call me and say, look, man, what's going on? Well, I say, look, I don't know what happened. I don't know what this broker did that works for me. Cause like I said, I opened my own place and I was like, I don't know what he did, but we need to work this out. Cause I don't have $2 million to cut you a check. So, and he would say, look, let's, I'm going to sell the paper. So he's now going to sell the bad paper. So he's going to sell it to Household Bank. And if it comes back on me, he goes, do me a favor and tell me you'll help me get rid of the loans. I was like, of course, absolutely. What am I going to say? No, you're on your own. So, I don't want him calling the FBI. So it ends up, it just escalates to the point where eventually, by this point I'm married, I've got a kid. I've got 13, 14 brokers working for me. They're all committing fraud. And eventually a broker that used to work for me went and started her own company. And when she did a bunch of fraudulent loans that came back on her. And the FBI came in, they indicted her and her husband. So they wore a wire on me because they knew my loans were fraudulent. They wore a wire on me and they ended up getting me indicted. And so I go in and I hire this attorney. I plead guilty. I mean, I'm guilty. There's no getting around it. And there was no chance I was going to go to prison. So, because it was a minor, the charge they got me for was minor. It was lying on a mortgage application. It ended up being wire fraud. It's kind of and there was no dollar loss. So I end up accepting I take a plea. I get 3 years probation, but I can't own the mortgage company anymore. So, at that point, I really should have, gone out and gotten a job selling used cars or something. But, I didn't really know what else to do. Didn't have any experience in anything else. So I was getting a divorce. Basically my wife wiped me out. So I was just in a bad spot. And basically I could have moved home with mom and dad, but I'm 30 something, I'm like 30 years old. So what I did instead was I figured, okay, you can either go the legit method and struggle, or you can take it up a notch and you can try and start pulling off like a major fraud. Instead of this grayish area that I felt like it was a gray area. I'm changing a number here. I said, what I'm going to do? I'm going to figure out how to just start flipping properties. I was already flipping them. But the problem with flipping properties is this. You buy these houses for $40,000 or $50,000. You put 20 in them. You sell them for 100. Your borrowers in these areas are shit borrowers. So they don't have good credit. They have bad job history. So they can barely get a loan. You usually have to give them their down payment. You have to pay their closing costs. You end up making $20,000, maybe $15,000, and it takes 4 months. So it's just not a lot of money for the headache, unless you're doing multiple properties. And basically you end up being a glorified construction worker. So, and I didn't want to be a construction worker. So what I did was I figured my problem is not buying and fixing up the houses, it's the borrowers. So if I could figure out how to manufacture my own borrowers, then that would be a plus. They wouldn't complain about their interest rate. I could make all the payments, and then I let the property go into foreclosure. So I figured out how to get Social Security. Our credit bureau is based on Social Security numbers. I'm sure you have some kind of a similar system in place. But so I figured out how to get Social Security to issue Social Security numbers to children that don't exist. So I'm getting them to make Social Security numbers. Then I'm getting 3 secured credit cards, and I'd make the payments. Well, in 6 months, you had like 720 credit scores. These amazing credit scores. And the person doesn't exist. So I would go and I would buy these houses. And the other problem was this. One, of course, I now don't have to fix up the house. I can buy it for 40 and I don't have to fix it up because nobody's going to ever live there. Well, the other thing was getting the appraisals high enough. Like you really want to get an appraisal high. How do you do that? It's you know what it's like? You were in stocks, right? So it's like a pump and dump scheme. I went out and I started manufacturing sale prices at 200,000. I'm buying houses for 40 and 50,000, and I'm recording the value of the sales price at 200,000. I was dating a girl at the title company. She told me how to do it. So now I bought the house. It looks like my fake borrower bought a house for 200,000. He really bought it for 40. I was then able to go back to the bank, refinance the house that was now worth 200,000. They'd lend him 160 or 180,000 because he has perfect credit. He bought it for 40. Maybe I put 10 in it. Borrowed 160. I just made $100,000 minimum. I'd make 3 or 4 payments. I'd let the property go into foreclosure. So the name of the borrowers, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this, is, and I'm sure you saw the show, is I named my borrowers like James Red, Michael White, Lee Black, William Blue, David Silver, Brandon Green. So it was green, black, blue, red. So I was a big fan of Quentin Tarantino, and I'd seen the movie Reservoir Dogs. And I didn't name anybody Mr. Pink. So what ends up happening is each guy bought about 4 or 5 houses, borrowed about $1 million in each guy's name. We would make about $600,000 per person. And I think towards the end, the FBI said I had borrowed $11.5 million in these guys, in my phantom borrowers' names. Or they call them now synthetic identities. Like after I did it, when I went to prison, it started becoming like a thing. So it has its own name now. So these synthetic identities would buy all these houses, and we'd make some payments, and they'd go into foreclosure. And then, of course, the banks start looking. Now the banks start coming around. They start sending investigators out to try and talk to you. They start sending collection notices. So I retyped an article in like the Tampa Tribune about a car crash where one of the people in the car crashes was life flighted to Tampa General Hospital. So I would put the name of my guy in it, reprint it on newsprint, cut it up so it looks like it's on newsprint, cut it all up, and then mail it to the collection agencies and the banks saying, from this guy's imaginary sister, saying that my brother was in a car accident. I know he's behind on the mortgage. You might as well take the house. Even if the doctors say, even if he comes out of the coma, he'll never work again. And they would stop calling. They'd stop sending letters in. They'd stop coming by. I mean, it was, I mean, this is going to sound horrible. It was a perfect fucking scheme, bro. It worked. It went years. I went years. I think I was only caught one time by South Star Bank. They caught one of my guys and realized that it's complete fraud. I remember the broker came to me and said, look, the account executive is saying that the guy doesn't exist. The bank is onto it. So I ended up having to call the bank as this guy and say, look, this is who I am. I understand that I haven't made a payment. I'm putting it in the mail. They're like, no, it's way past that. We figured out the SOCH. We figured out that your driver's license was never issued. We figured out this. We figured out that. And I ended up convincing them to allow me to simply pay them back. Let me just pay you back. Because otherwise, if they were like, oh, well, when we foreclose on the property, we'll get our money back. Like, no, you don't seem to understand. Your property's worth 40 grand. You lent me 150. So they go back and they look at the appraisal, and I explain to them what I did. And their attitude totally changed. They were like, okay, now Mr. Cox, or Mr. whatever his name was. This wasn't one of the colored guys. This was one of the this guy's was, I think this was Alan Duncan. He was like, Mr. Duncan, let's we can work this out. So they let me pay him back. Never called the FBI. What else happened? I'm trying to think. The only other time I had an issue with it was one of the title agents. I don't know how it is in the UK. When you close, you have to go to either an attorney or you go to a title agent to handle all the paperwork. Well, we were convincing the title agents to give me all the paperwork, and I'll have my borrower sign. Like, I'm not showing up with borrowers to sign. I'm taking the paperwork to them to sign. And then the title person would notarize that they'd seen them when they didn't. So finally this woman says, listen, no, that's not happening anymore. I'm not doing that anymore. Somebody had told her something. So I convince a guy to pretend to be him, to pretend to be a guy named James Red. And I just so happened, I was making fake the licenses, and I'd make a copy of the license, and I was using people that I knew had been arrested because I could get their photograph. And I had used the guy that was cleaning our vacant lots and doing a lot of the work on the houses. So his picture was James Red. So I call him up and I said, hey, can you come in the office? He comes in and I go, listen, I got to talk to you for a minute. And he goes, what? I said, here's what we've been, the houses you've been cleaning? He goes, yeah. I said, here's what we've been doing. And I explained the whole thing. He goes, man, that's brilliant. He goes, wow. He said, so now this woman wants this guy, James Red, to show up and sign? And I went, yeah, exactly. He goes, man, who are you going to get to do that? And I went, well, I was thinking you, Eric. And his name was Eric Tamargo. And he goes, I was thinking you, Eric. And he goes, oh, that's a big favor, bro. It's a big favor. And I went, well, I mean, I'm willing to pay you. What do you want for it? He goes, man, I don't know. That's a big favor, bro. He said, I'm not doing it for nothing. I said, yeah, well, what do you want? And I remember thinking, if he asks for more than 10 or 15,000, I'll go to another title company and I'll walk in and I'll do it myself. And he said, well, wait a minute. He goes, you said that she's got a copy of the guy's ID. And I went, right. He said, well, she's going to know it's not me. I said, well, that's the thing, Eric. I've been using your ID, your picture of you that's on the Hillsborough County on the arrest website on the internet. I've been using your picture. He goes, you motherfucker. Well, he almost killed me. I was like, whoa. I remember I said, the only reason I used your ID was because I knew if it ever came down to this moment and I had to have somebody go in and sign, you were the only person I knew that had the balls to pull it off. And he goes, yeah. I mean, come on. It was a fluke. So anyway, he says, I'm not going to do it for free. I said, how much? I figure I'll pay him 10 or 15,000. He goes, $500. I want $500. And I went, $500? Eric, are you serious? It's a couple minutes work. And he goes, no, 500, that's it, bro. That's it. And I went, all right. I said, well, you got to sign before I pay you. And he goes, oh, yeah, no, I'll sign. I was like, next day we go in. I make him a fake ID. He goes in. The woman actually brings the file with her, the picture, and looks at the picture and the ID. And she's like, dang. Like, she was like, what's going on? So she lets him sign. He sees all the checks, 20,000 here, 15,000 here, 5,000 here, he's, 17,000 here, and he realizes this is a lot of money. We get back in the car and I pay him. And he goes, yeah, man, that's a lot of money. I said, a lot of that money goes back in the houses, Eric. We got to buy new houses. It's not like it's all free money. It was free money. But so about a week later, we have another closing and I call him back and he goes, okay, I'll sign, but I'm not signing for $500. He said, that's crazy. I said, I'm going to want way more than that. I said, Eric, I totally understand. How much do you want? And he goes, I want $1,000. $1,000. And I just remember thinking, I had to cover my face. Like I had to go, because I'm like trying not to laugh. I'm just like, I want to say, are you fucking serious? We're going to make $80,000 on this transaction. You want fucking $1,000? Anyway, so I gave him, he went, he signed, gave him $1,000. So I think that's about You know what? What ends up happening is uh, a buddy of mine was running a scam. At this point, I'm kind of surrounded by scam artists. You know what I'm saying? Like selling ecstasy. Like pretty soon, you get in that world, and everybody suddenly it's like I don't really know that many normal people anymore. So a buddy of mine was running a scam. He ends up getting grabbed in a bank. He cooperates against me. He says, "Look, I know you got me, but I can tell you about a guy that's running a multi-million-dollar scam in Tampa." And it wasn't hard to prove it because all he had to do was go in public records and say, "You see these 5 houses? They were all bought by a guy named Red. You see these 10 houses or these 5 or 6 houses? They were all bought by a guy named Black. See these 5? Green. You see these 5?" And so very quickly they're like, whoa, whoa. They're all going into foreclosure. So a task force is put together, and uh, and eventually it's handed to the FBI. And I know something's going on. I know something's going on because, like the chick I used to date at the title company, she calls me and says, "Look, we were just served with a bunch of subpoenas." Other title companies are calling me saying subpoenas. Lenders, account executive at lenders are calling saying we just got subpoenas. So I know something's happening. I kept telling myself, calm down, don't overreact. Maybe it won't go anywhere. They're never going to find these guys. It's just delusional thinking. So denial. And eventually I'm at work one day, and keep in mind, I'm on federal probation. I got a probation officer who's coming around twice, 2, 3 times a month looking around. I mean, so I got a real problem if I get caught. So one day I have a buddy who's a sheriff's deputy. I did like $1 million worth of loans for he and his wife. Really at least $1 million, might have been 2 million. Anyway, so he comes by one day, the office, and he says, "Can I talk to you for a second?" I go, "Sure, what's up?" Walks me outside, and he goes, "Listen, I used to date a girl in the Tampa Police Department." I said, "Okay." He goes, "She was a part of a task force that was investigating you. She came to me this morning and told me they handed the task force over to the FBI." He goes, yeah, it was a bad day. So he goes, you're going to be arrested in a few days." So I was dating this girl. I'd known her a month. It's the first month. They're all amazing the first month. She seemed just awesome. So anyway, I start packing my bags because I'm leaving. I remember the cop was like, "Well, what are you gonna do?" I said, I'm out of here. I'm not staying around to go to prison. That's craziness." So he goes, "Okay." He said, "Well, what do I do?" I said, "Well, nobody's going to believe you're involved anyway. Just tell them you came, you signed some papers and left. You didn't handle the loan. You're fine. You don't know how it works." I said, "I'm not going to be around." So he goes, "Okay." Well, I'm packing my bags that night. First, I only got out like 80 grand. Like I had like a day to get out 80,000 in cash. And I don't know how it is in the UK. But let me tell you, they don't want to give you your money. You walk in and ask them, and they're like, "What do you want it for? What are you doing?" "Well, I can't give you. You want $30,000? I can't give you $30,000. You got to go to a special branch." And you guys like, "This is my money." So I had people go in real quick with 7,000, 5,000, 8,000, all under 10,000 increments of $10,000. So I got about 80 grand. I packed my bags. My girlfriend comes over because I missed a date. We were supposed to have a date or something. She shows up for the date or something like that. And she sees me packing. I tell her what's going on. She begs to come with me, which was a major mistake. So she's like, "Look, I've never met anybody like you. Oh my God." Of course, she sees all the money. She sees the money. So she's only seen this amazing, this young, good looking guy at the time. Now I'm an old man. But, so she's only seen this great life that I'm living, great cars and houses, and everybody's got money. So she wants to come with me. I should have known right there she was insane. So, I mean, think about it. So who does that? Who walks away their entire life? I'm going to prison. I have to walk away. I don't know. Well, where'd you go? Arizona?
Arizona
Yeah.
State.
Did you ever have people that like actually like showed up at the gate to serve their sentence?
Oh, you mean when people got released?
No, I mean like you could plead guilty, and then some people they do what's called remand. They take you right then. Some people you plead guilty to 5 years and they go, okay, we're gonna let you stay out and just turn yourself into the prison next month. They give
I was on remand for 26 months. My bail was 1.5 million.
Yeah, well, no, you're not going anywhere. Plus, you're not a U.S. citizen. You're a flight risk. But
Yeah.
guys would show up to the prison with like a 5 year sentence or a 10 year sentence, and like, oh, I'm here to do my sentence. You got to catch me. I'm not showing up to do my sentence. Absolutely not. So I take off. I run up all my credit cards, buy a bunch of shit, grab the girlfriend. We take off. We go to Atlanta. We barely have any money. I would say this: we had like 80,000, and it sounds people are like, that's not broke, bro. 80,000 on the run, two people, that's broke. That's not going to last long. What am I going to do? I'm going to go get a job as a waiter. So anyway, at this point, I was manufacturing these identities, right? Like these people didn't exist. Well, I can't get pulled over by the police and give him a fake ID that I made. He's going to know. So I figured I have to start, what do you do? So I need real identification. So I figure out we'd have to get real identification. So one, I need money. And two, I need identification and new cars, everything. I'm driving around I can't get pulled over. I'm done. So, and look, the United States is like a fucking police state, bro. You're getting pulled over all the time. I mean, it's not good. So, I go to Atlanta and I figure out the best way to steal someone's identity. One, I run some ads and I get some people's identities. Just run some ads saying, hey, home loans available, good credit, bad credit, no problem. People call up the number, they apply for a loan, they give me everything I need to steal their identity. Then I go get a driver's license in their name, get a passport, the whole thing. But what I figure out right away is that some of these people have DUIs, where they've been arrested for being drunk. They lose their licenses. Like I could be driving around on somebody's driver's license that has lost it. So they're flying the ointment. So I figure what I need to do is get people's identification that aren't using it. And so that ended up being, and I realized it was homeless people. So I start making surveys to survey homeless people because I don't want them to know they gave me their ID. So I go out and I say I work for the Salvation Army. Do you know what the Salvation Army is?
Yes.
Okay. So I make a survey and I get a badge saying I'm work for the Salvation Army, and I start surveying homeless people. So I've got to find white guys in their early 30s who are homeless. There's not a lot of them, but so I'm going out and I'm saying, hey, look, I'm taking a survey for the Salvation Army to try and determine where we're going to place our next homeless facility. It pays $20 cash right now, and they'd be like, yeah, right now you're going to give me 20, yes, okay, and they'd fill it out. Well, now I have enough information to order your birth certificate, your high school transcripts, your social security card. I register to vote in your name. I can order credit cards in your name. I can get all this information. I can go into the local DMV. And when I go in the DMV, I say, well, not the local DMV. I go into a DMV where you've never had a driver's license because the state DMVs don't cross-reference. You can't pull up. If you're in Arizona, you can't pull up my picture from Florida. So if this guy had a driver's license in Florida, I go to Alabama. I think I've had 27, what they say, the Secret Service said I had 26 driver's licenses in 7 different states or something. And like I've had like 24 passports. Anyway, so I end up getting these guys information. We're in Atlanta. We rent a house. I go down to public records and I manufacture a satisfaction of lien. So I satisfy the lien from Bank of America that's on the house. So I then go to 3 different lenders at the same time, and I have them all come out to the house. I say I'm the homeowner. The guy's name's Michael Shanahan. Each one of them says they'll lend me $150,000. So I close all the loans at the same time. Now, there's no lien on the house now. I've satisfied it. It looks like in in the U.S., public records, they record the deed, which says you own the house, and then under the deed, it'll say the mortgage. Like you have a lien on the house, and you have to make payments for this long. Well, when that lien gets paid off, Bank of America sends a satisfaction of lien in that says, hey, we're Bank of America. This guy paid us off. So now if you pull the title, it says that Michael Shanahan owns the property and he has paid off the lien that was on it. He doesn't owe any money. And I'm Michael Shanahan. So I call up 3 lenders. They come out, they look at the house, they say they'll lend me $150,000. So I borrow about $450,000 on the house, all within the same day or two. Oh, it's just the whole system's completely flawed. It's completely fucked up. You have to have a certain skill set to pull it off, obviously, but really, it's just so damaged. So they lend me the money. I take the checks. I deposit the checks into bank accounts that I've opened up in a variety of different people's names. And I then go in, and my girlfriend and I go in, and we start cashing checks, which the money's there. So it's not a big deal because the money's there. You go in and say, hey, I need $9,000, and they check. He's got $9,000. Give him it's his check. Give him $9,000. So we had to try and get out like $450,000 in as quickly as possible. And so the only time I got the close call there was sometimes they would, a lot of times sometimes they would call they would call to verify, they'd call to verify the checks. So they do that sometimes. Like if I cut a check or you get a cashier's check and you go to cash it, they'll call to say, hey, did you write this check? Right? And then the guy who owns the account says, yes, I did. And he says, okay, and they cash it. So what happens is I walk into a bank one time. We were cashing little checks, $3,000, $9,000, $7,000. So one day I have a check for $29,000. And I'm like, this is taking forever. I'm just going to go cash this check. And she goes, well, we're supposed to try and stay under 10,000, but do what you want to do. I go, okay. And then keep in mind, this chick is crazy. Every time I go in the bank, she's saying stuff like, what if you get caught? And I go, well, if I get caught, you get me a lawyer and you get me out of prison, or you get me out of jail as quickly as possible. They won't be arresting me as Matt Cox. They'll be arresting me as like Scott Cugno, or they'll be arresting me at I was using real IDs. So they're going to arrest me as this guy. He's a real person. So my identity isn't in question. So they're not going to run my prints right away. So you can probably get me out before that happens. Now this was 15 years ago. So they didn't have like the scanners where you put your thumbprint or they didn't have that yet. And these are county sheriffs and stuff. They charge them. In the US, they get charged to run an APHIS report. So they're not, if you have an ID, why would they run they don't run your prints. It's not in question. I'm going to put this on.
Yeah, put it on silent, please.
Yeah, I just totally realized that. Sorry,
That's
man.
okay.
Airplane mode. So what ends up happening is I go in this bank. The guy says, I say I want to cash a check for $29,000. My name is Scott Cugno, and I have a cashier's check written on your bank. So I say, here's the check, and they go, well, the cashier says, well, you're going to have to talk to the bank manager. I go sit down in his office. He comes in. He says, well, what are you cashing the check for? And I went, he goes, why don't you deposit in your bank account? I said, because my bank account's in Florida. I'm in Georgia, and they're going to hold it, and it's a cashier's check. It's good. And he goes, yeah, okay, well, all right, let me check. So he comes back. He goes, well, what do you use the cash for? The fuck? It's really none of his business. But I went, it's an easy question. And I said, well, I work for a company that, like a labor company, we do construction work, and some of the contractors or the some of the construction workers, we pay them and they don't have bank accounts, so I was going to cash their checks for them. He goes, okay, that makes sense. So he leaves. My girlfriend calls me. She's like, what's going on? I go, the guy's, he's giving me a hard time. He thinks something's wrong. She's like, get out of the bank. I'm like, I can't get out of the bank. He's got my ID, my social security number. He's got my credit cards. He's got the check. If I walk out, he'll know something's wrong. I got to wait. She's like, oh my God. So I hang up. A couple minutes later, he comes back. He asks me some other question. How'd you get the check? I said, well, my company, we remodeled this guy's house and he cut me a check. This is from he refinanced his house and he cut me a check. And this is the check. It's a cashier's check, right? It's good. He's like, yeah, okay. He leaves again. She calls me. What's going on? Look, calm down. He's got my shit. He's just being an asshole about it. And she's like, get out of the bank. I go, I cannot get out of the bank. I said, look, worst that happens, if I get arrested, you get me a lawyer and get me out. And she's like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. I go, well, calm down. So I hang up the phone. And he comes back again. And he goes, okay, what about this? He asked me some other question. I went, and I answer it. He goes, who gave you the check? And I go, a guy named Michael Shanahan. And he goes, you see, I'm cashing the check as Scott Cugno, an ID I've stolen, an identity I've stolen that I got a driver's license in. And so he's like, Mr. Cugno, who gave you the check? And I go, Michael Shanahan. I'm also Michael Shanahan. And he goes, okay, that makes sense. So he walks off. He comes back later, and she calls again. He comes back later, and he says, okay. And I go, what's taking so long? And he goes, well, we're trying to get a hold of Michael Shanahan to verify the check. And I'm like, oh, okay. My phone rings. It's the girl. She's like, what's I go, they're trying to verify it's Michael Shanahan. She's, oh my God, get out of the bank. I'm like, I can't. I hang up the phone. A minute later, my phone rings again. But it's not her. It's not Becky. The girl's name is Becky. And I look at it, and it's a number I don't recognize. So I answer, and I go, hello? And they go, hi, is this Michael Shanahan? I said, yes, it is. And I'm looking around the bank, and she goes, hi, we have someone at the bank trying to cash a check. Could you verify, the check? And I was like, yeah, it's $29,000. I said, I think it's, she has this guy named Scott Cugno. I went, right. She goes, can you verify the amount? And I go, right. Scott Cugno's $29,000. And she goes, oh, okay. I remember I asked her, how'd you get this number? And she goes, we called the title company who issued the check. And they gave us your phone number. Think about it. She could have called. What if she had called? If she called information, she could have got the number. They could have got the number a dozen different ways. They happened to call. So I was like, oh, okay. So I hang up the phone. I wait a minute. The manager comes out with this woman. I don't know if it's the same chick, but they count out $29,000. I take the $29,000. I stand up. I'm stuffing the money in my pockets. And he goes, Mr. Cugno? He goes, I said, yeah, what's going on? He goes, I'd like to say something. He said, I feel very apprehensive about this transaction. And I go, really? What is it? And he goes, I can't put my finger on it. And I went, well, it'll come to you. And I walk right out of the bank. I remember getting in the car laughing, going, oh my God, you're not going to believe this. So anyway, I never cashed a check for anything over $10,000 again. So anyway, what happens is we get like for a little over 400, close to 450,000. There's fees and shit. So I don't know, roughly 450,000. And then we leave, and we drop our cars off. We relocate the scam to North Carolina, to Charlotte, North Carolina. And the Secret Service shows up. So not the FBI, but the Secret Service shows up because Secret Service investigates anything that has to do with, of course, they protect the President of the United States, but they also investigate anything that has to do with the financial infrastructure of the United States and identity theft. So I had identity theft and I had bank fraud. So they enter the picture. They come and they, keep in mind the FBI raided my office like 4 or 5 days after I left. Secret Service shows up in Atlanta a week after I've left. So I go to North Carolina, and I pop back into South Carolina, and I buy a house, buy a couple of houses, and I do the same thing. I satisfy the loans on the houses. I actually convince the owners to owner finance me the house. So I buy the houses. I then go to public records and I satisfy the loans on the houses. I then go to multiple banks and I borrow $1.3 million on the houses. So, I mean, at this point, the money's going fast. Like, we've been to Jamaica, we've gone to Mexico, we've gone to Bermuda. I mean, we're going all over the place. We're going to Vegas. We're blowing money. This chick's a maniac. She's bipolar. She's up and down. She won't take her medication. She's got the cops called on me a few times. And she's just insane. I'm terrified of her. So we end up. We go to South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, and I buy 2 houses and I borrow $1.3 million. And we're pulling money out. We get out like $500,000-$600,000. And so halfway through the scam, I go into a bank, and it turns out that it just so happens that one of the loan officers had gone on vacation and had never ordered title work. So by the time she gets back from vacation and orders the title work, the other loans have all closed. I'm closing 2-3 loans a day at one point, so they all close right away. Or so they all get missed. But when she orders it a couple weeks later. So if an abstractor were to go down to public records, they would see all these loans being filed, and they would know it's a scam, and that's exactly what happened. So I walk into Wachovia. There used to be Wachovia Bank. So I walk into this bank, Wachovia Bank, and I get like $8,000. I'm cashing a check for $7,000 or $8,000, something like that. These 2 sheriffs come up behind me, and they grab me and they handcuff me behind my back. So they pull me in this side room, and they tell me, the guy grabs my ID, and he says, and at this point I was a guy named Gary Sullivan. I had surveyed a homeless guy named Gary Sullivan in Las Vegas. Gary Sullivan was homeless, but he had also been arrested multiple times for prostitution. So I order all of his documents. I go get a South Carolina ID, not a driver's license, just an ID in his name. And I'm driving a car that's in another guy's name. That guy had a driver's license. So I'm in there, I'm handcuffed. The sheriffs say, listen, the deputies say, listen, we're waiting for the detective to show up, Mr. Sullivan. And they go, okay, so it'll just be so they keep calling me Mr. Sullivan. And I'm thinking, okay, they don't know who I am. Like, I thought this is it. So the detective shows up and he says, hi, listen, Mr. Sullivan, my name's Detective whatever. Wachovia has a fraud alert out on you. They are saying you've committed some kind of what's called a shotgunning scam. You've closed a bunch of loans on the same house, and you have 3 mortgages on the same house. I actually had 6, but they'd only caught 3. So I looked at him and I went, he goes, so Wachovia said you have 3 mortgages on the house. And I go, is that illegal? And he goes, I don't know. He goes, but they're upset about it. So let's call them. So I get him to take the handcuffs off me. So, and I'm sitting there and he calls and he goes, do you have your ID? And I went, no. I said, this guy's got it. And so he's like, oh yeah, I got it. So they call Wachovia as the head of the fraud department. And he gets on the phone and he's telling him, look, this guy's running it's called a shotgunning scam. He closed a bunch of loans so quickly. We don't know, we couldn't catch it in time. He's pulling out the cash. We've got him. You got to arrest him. He's like, yeah, but for what? He's got 3 first mortgages. And I went, first mortgages? I said, yeah, but honestly, I said, I don't have first mortgages. I have a first mortgage. I have a second mortgage, and I have a home equity line of credit. So Wachovia is screaming, that's a lie. That's not true. And I went, no. I said, Wachovia lent me a first mortgage. So I'm arguing with the detective and the guy from Wachovia. Now, I know way more than he knows because I'm saying the mortgages never said first mortgage, second mortgage. They don't state. The placement of the mortgage is what determines whether it's a first, second, or third, whatever. So I explained that, and he's like, yeah, you're right. So they go back and forth, back and forth. This guy on the phone is screaming. I eventually I got the detective. He's calling me Gary. You know, I'm calling him Mark or whatever his name is. I'm making faces like, are you serious? This guy's saying, well, I would never. And I said, look, I think, at one point I lean and I go, I think they've got a problem at the bank. And he goes, yeah, you know, I think you have a problem at the bank. This guy's going nuts. Arrest him, arrest him. So I said, look, what makes more sense? I said, I work for a labor company, you know, and I pull out a business card, and I said, and it's like labor on demand. So I said, I work for a labor company. What makes more sense? A guy that works for a labor company that has no experience in finance or in banking convinced 3 lenders to lend $500,000 on a house, or that a bunch of loan officers got together and figured out how to lend this guy all the money and make some fees for themselves. I wouldn't know how to pull this off if I tried. So he goes, yeah, it doesn't make sense. This guy wouldn't know what he's doing. I mean, I get the detective on my side. I remember at one point the guy from Wachovia screams, his license or his ID is fake. He goes, it starts with 000. It wasn't fake though. It was really issued by South Carolina, DMV. So he goes, no, I ran him through NCIC. It's the National Criminal Database. He goes, NCIC myself. It's him. He's Gary Sullivan. And I go, oh, come on, bro. Now I'm not Gary Sullivan. I go, what are we doing here? This is ridiculous. So he's like, I know, Gary, I know. So he tells him, okay, look, I'm not gonna arrest him. I'm gonna have him follow me to the police station. I'm gonna have him fill out a police report, and I'll let you know what the district attorney says. I wouldn't even know what to charge him with. He hangs up the phone, and he says to me, will you follow me back? And I said, yeah, of course I'll follow you back. Of course, Mark, or whatever his name was. I mean, we're buddies. So the 2 deputies are still there. So this guy says, okay, so he goes, do you have his ID? And he goes, yeah. He goes, he's got an ID. He goes, do you have a driver's license? Because you're going to follow me back in your car. Do you have a driver's license? And I went, you know, I do, but it's in Nevada. And he goes, I said, it's a Nevada driver's license. I said, I don't have it with me. I just have a South Carolina ID. And he said, oh, that's right. You're from Nevada originally. And I realized he ran me through NCIC. Remember? So he thinks I've been arrested multiple times for prostitution, because the homeless guy, Gary Sullivan, had been arrested for prostitution. He thinks I'm a male prostitute. And I was just like, fuck. He looks at they all kind of grin at each other. And I'm like, fuck, this is ridiculous. So he lets me follow him in my car, back to the police station. Oh, this is the best part. One of the deputies takes my ID and says, I'll run it. Let me check. He goes out to his car. He runs Gary Sullivan's name through the system, and he comes back and he says, yeah, he's got a valid driver's license in Nevada. Couldn't fucking believe it. And he goes, and keep in mind, I'm 5'6". So he goes, it checks out. He goes, well, it says he's 5'10". And they all look at me and I go, fellas, with a good pair of shoes? And they all go, ha, 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 follow us to the police station. I'm just like, this is ridiculous. So I go to get in my car. Listen to this. I get in my car, and my phone's been ringing off the hook. Becky's been calling and calling. And I pick it up and I'm like, hey, what's going on? She goes, oh my God, you won't believe this. She goes, you're number 1 on the Secret Service's most wanted list. I got bigger problems. That I was just caught in the fucking bank. I'm now driving to the police station to fill out a police report. And she goes, get on the interstate. And I go, I can't. The cops are behind me. The detective's in front of me. What am I going to do? I got to play this out. I said, look, the worst that'll happen is you get me a lawyer and get me out. And she goes, I'm not getting you a lawyer. I'm not getting you out on bond. She had like 600 or 700. She had, about 600,000 in cash. She goes, I'm not risking everything I've got for you. She had all of our money. So I remember I said, listen, then I better not get arrested. So I go in the police department. I fill out the police report. The detective talks to his lieutenant. He comes back. He tells me, asks me to wait in the hallway. He didn't want to leave me in his cube. They had like cubicles, and he didn't want to leave me in the cube. He goes, "Can you wait? I can't leave you here. Can you wait in the hallway?" Sure. So I stand in the hallway, and there's all these wanted posters on the wall. My Secret Service poster was on the wall. The only color poster. I was like, fuck. So he comes up, he's like, "Hey, we're gonna go ahead and I'm not gonna detain you any longer." He did talk. I think he said he did talk to the district attorney, and she's looking into it. He goes, "Do me a favor, don't go anywhere." I said, "I own 2 houses here. Where am I gonna go? I work here." And he's like, "Okay, yeah." So I get in my car. Becky's calling. I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" And I'm like, "What the?" I remember I got on the phone. I was like, "You fucking bitch." And she's like, "Oh no, I was on my way. I was coming. I was just trying to get you to get on the interstate." It's like, so I remember I drive right from there. I drove straight to the bank and got out another $9,000. I went to another bank and got out another $8,000 or $9,000. Went to another bank, and then the women that were there, I could tell they tried to like grab the phone. They went for the phone and picked it up when I walked in, turned around, got in my car and left. Drove to where did I go? Yeah, you know what? I was gonna say, what's upsetting is that the satisfaction of loans, I signed one of them. I ended up signing. Do you ever watch The Simpsons?
Occasionally.
Yeah, I signed like C. Montgomery Burns, which is the aging tycoon. The guy that owns the power plant. So that didn't. I thought I was cute. It wasn't cute. When I got in front of the judge, he didn't think it was cute at all. So anyway, what ended up happening was I drove to meet Becky. By then, we'd relocated to Houston, Texas. So I go to Houston. I meet her. We get into this huge argument because I'm furious that she was going to leave me. We get into this huge argument. I tell her I want to split the money because it's like $600,000. I left like $600,000 in the banks. So yeah, that was hard to walk away from. So we argue. She says, "Look, she's telling me she's going to call the police. Like, I'm not giving you." She's like, "I'll give you like $10,000. I'm like, $10,000? She goes, "Yeah." And I said, No, we need to split it up. We start arguing. I told her, "Look, if you don't come up with a fair number," I said, "I say 300,000 each." She goes, "No." She goes, "You'll go steal some more money. I can't do it." She goes, "I can't do what you do." And I was like, "Okay, so how about this?" I said, "Come up with something reasonable." I said, "I'm going to take it all." And she goes, "You take it all?" She said, "I'll call the police. And they'll grab you." So she ends up giving me $100,000 of the money that I rightfully stole. So that's I know what you're thinking, but that's my money. So I get 100,000. I go back to Charlotte to get my car. So I remember I got my car, drove down. It was a parking lot. We lived in the middle of downtown. Drove down, went to a Starbucks. And when I was at the Starbucks, I walk in there and I order a coffee. And I'm waiting for the barista to make the coffee. And there were 2 employees from my apartment complex. Oh, you know what I didn't mention? This is so stupid. I don't even know why this is bad. Look, on my way to Charlotte, I actually called the FBI agent that was looking for me. I only called her. It seems cocky. I know it seems arrogant, but I only called her because I called home to talk to my ex-wife and talk to my mom. And I called a friend of mine, one of my old brokers, and she said, "Look, I talked to the FBI agent." Everybody had already been interviewed. They were all ready to cooperate against me. So she said, "I talked to her. She wants you to call." She goes, "Call her." And I went, "Are you fucking?" I said, "No, I don't think so." She goes, "No, call her. Maybe you can turn yourself in. Maybe you can work something out." So I said, "Okay." She's like, "It can't hurt." So I call. She gives me the phone number, and I call the phone number. And the woman's name was an FBI agent, Candace Calderon. this is a rough chick. She's not a fan. So I call her, I talk to her. She so she's real cocky on the phone. I said, hey, this is Matt Cox. I understand you wanted me to call you. And she's like, yeah, hey, Mr. Cox. She's like, I'd like for you to turn yourself in. I go, that's not going to happen. And she goes, okay. I said, well, what else can I do for you? And she goes, well, let's talk about you turning yourself in. I said, well, how much time am I, how much time am I looking at if I turn myself in? She goes, well, that's not how it works. The way it works is you turn yourself in, and then we determine how much, what we're going to consider it, how much we're going to take off your sentence for turning yourself in. I went, no, I'm not doing that. That's stupid. I said, I need to know up front. She goes, well, let me call the U.S. attorney. Well, no, first what she said was she kept calling me sweetie. It just fucking pissed me off. She's like, listen, sweetie. She goes, you're going to get caught eventually. I said, oh, yeah? She's like, yeah. She goes, let me explain something. She goes, I remember she goes, we're 90% sure of where you're at. I go, yeah, well, only 100% counts, sweetie. And she goes, listen, she goes, you're gonna fuck up eventually. She goes, eventually you're going to go home, somebody will recognize you. She goes, or you will, she goes, or some police officer will recognize you, or something will happen and you're going to get pulled over by the police and they'll figure out who you are and arrest you. And she goes, you're going to get caught eventually. I said, yeah. I said, she says, we basically almost know where we're going to catch you. And I said, what's taking so long? I said, first of all, I said, I've been pulled over by the police. I said, I've gotten multiple tickets in other people's names. I even went to traffic school as somebody else. So I've got a dozen passports. I've been in and out of the country as other people. I said, I've had plastic surgery. Bro, I've had my nose done. I had hair transplants. I had what's called a mini facelift. I had liposuction. I've had everything. If you look at the pictures of me before and you look at me now, vastly different. So I say, yeah, I said, that's not going to happen. I said, I'm not going back to Tampa and nobody's going to recognize me. And she goes, you are a cocky shit, aren't you? We're like back and forth, bro. So anyway, she says, I'll call the U.S. attorney and I'm going to find out what I can do for you. I said, okay. So she goes, call me back. No, she goes, I'll call you back. What's the phone number? What phone number are you calling from? And I went, call. I said, no. I said, you're probably triangulating this or something. And I remember she goes, get over yourself. She goes, you're not that important. And I remember thinking, I was like embarrassed. I remember being like, yeah, I'm nobody. Who do I think I am? But for some reason I went, nah, I'll call you back. And I shut off my phone. So I found out later when I ordered something called the Freedom of Information Act, and it gives you all the documents in your case, that she actually hung up the phone and called the U.S. Marshals, and they couldn't track the phone, but they tracked it back to where it had been sold. So 2 marshals jumped in a car and were driving towards the location of where I was. So I call her back like an hour later. I go and I get in the truck. I was driving a U-Haul truck because I had moved my stuff to Houston, and my car was in Charlotte. So I get in the truck and I'm driving, and she calls me back and she's like, okay, listen, I talked to him 7 years. And I went, 7 years. She goes, 7 years. Turn yourself in Tampa. Come back to Tampa. I can get you 7 years. I was like, nah, I don't know about 7 years. Seems excessive. I said, I'm thinking maybe 2 or 3 years. And she's like, well, no, I can't do that. I don't know that I can do that. I said, well, you need to figure it out. I said, why don't I turn myself in Atlanta? And she goes, no, you have to turn yourself in Tampa. And I went, well, Atlanta's closer to me where I'm at. No. You turn yourself in Tampa. And I went, well, what did the Atlanta U.S. attorney say? And she went, make sure you don't go to Atlanta, go here because we want to be able to interview you and this. And I went, okay. I said, I understand. I said, but first of all, I said, I don't know that I'm going to take 7 years. Secondly, I said, what did the U.S. attorney in Atlanta say? Because they still don't know about South Carolina. So I'm trying to get it all, put into one case. And so she dodges the question 3 or 4 times. Finally, I go, I've asked you 3 fucking times, and you keep not answering. What did the Atlanta U.S. attorney say? You're talking to the Tampa one. What did Atlanta say? She goes, well, I don't know. I go, how much time do I have to do in Atlanta? It's all included, right? And she's like, well, I don't know. You have to take that up with Atlanta. I said, oh, hell no. You're telling me that 7 years just for Tampa? What about that ended up being 11.5 million. What are they going to do in Atlanta? And what are they going to do when they find out about the 1.3 million? That's another almost $2 million while I'm on the run. And it's not good. So I said, oh man, you almost had me there. And she goes, look, I can call them. I said, man, lady, I wouldn't believe you if you told me water was wet. And I fucking chucked the phone out because I figured I'm doing at least 14 or 15 years now, at least. Plus I was on probation.